Wouldn't it be nice if Adam Sandler didn't count the dates up all so wrong? And wouldn't it be nice to talk together in a format that goes way too long? You know it's time to rewind, baby, for 19 dates of this movie with Drew Barry. Yeah, wouldn't it be nice? Good morning, listeners. It's another beautiful day here on It's Time to Rewind. I'm your host, Bubbawheat, and joining me today is my guest, Nick Rehak. How are you doing today?
I am doing well, man. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. And this season we're discussing uh what was the movie again?
It's called 51st Dates.
Oh, right. Well, actually, it's 19 first dates, and we're going through them one date at a time. This week is what I'm calling their 17th date because it's their 17th interaction, even though it's not technically a date because the interaction is only one-sided. But it starts at 79 minutes and 57 seconds with Lucy painting, and ends at 81 minutes and 12 seconds with Lucy walking past Henry at the aquarium. So before we jump into today's little montage episode, what is your history with this movie and in general with Adam Sandler movies?
Well, with 51st Dates, I saw it, or I didn't see it in theaters, but I saw it around the time it came out because I felt like it was all of a sudden just everywhere. It was all over like HBO or Showtime or one of those channels, and having it on in the background and just it's always being on. I've seen it a handful of times. I feel like my parents had the DVD, but I hadn't seen it in the longest time, so I rewatched it recently, and it was really sweet. It was endearing. It was better than I remember it being, and I really enjoyed it. And it kind of makes me want to revisit more of Adam Sandler's work because, in high school and college, I watched a lot of his films, your Billy Madison, Happy Gilmore, and a lot of those just outwardly comedic films he's done. But in recent years, him doing stuff like Uncut Gems or a couple years prior, I mean, even I think just before this movie, Punch Drunk Love, some of those
Mhm.
type roles too, and just kind of rediscovering Adam Sandler instead of just going like you kind of know the beats when you watch his movies, and sometimes it's fun to watch them because you know what you're going to get. You want something light, you want something silly, and other times I'm like, I wish you would have just done something a little bit different and given this a little more heart instead of just turning it into like a massive fart joke. Not saying he turns his movies into fart jokes, but there's always that one moment like he just can't let something be serious. It's got to have one little like absurd thing in there. And sometimes I'm in the
Yeah,
mood for it, but sometimes I'm not.
yeah, it's hard to watch an Adam Sandler movie where he doesn't either go into some weird like baby talk or
Mm-hmm.
he
Mm-hmm.
just will randomly just get angry. He does his go into normal voice and then go into angry voice.
Yeah. That's exactly it. And the shout sometimes it feels like it's out of nowhere and then there's no acknowledgement of it. It's just like, okay, we're gonna go do this thing now. And then off they go and do whatever.
Yeah, and uh, let's go ahead and jump into this montage. And I will say that, for listeners of my previous seasons, I am kind of known to break up montages into their individual pieces, and I decided not to do that this time, even though this this clearly takes place. This is like a time lapse montage where it takes course over a period of like several days, and there's some flashbacks mixed in here. But I decided that, uh, in the concept of breaking this down into each date, the during this entire montage, there's only one moment where they actually have an interaction or a new interaction between Henry and Lucy that's not a flashback. And so I decided to count this entire montage as one quote unquote date because they have the single interaction at the very end of this montage. But what did you think about this montage, and like what's your thoughts on this part of the movie? Because this is like right after Lucy decides to, as I called it last, well, 2 weeks ago, her eternal sunshine of the spotless minding Henry out of her life.
Yeah, that's kind of what happens there, isn't it? When she's typing stuff up and she's like, let's take this page out. And, and I especially like the one where he's like, it didn't last long, but it was incredible. And he's like, well, yeah, let's just go ahead and take this page out too. I like the scene because it feels real. It's the realest part of the film, I feel, in that there's just two people, they're living their lives, one of them just kind of in this ignorant bliss, and the other one, with regret, with that longing. But it's not one of those things where he's just laying in bed and crying and like it's just more and more a mountain of like tissue boxes and trash all over the place and just really letting himself go. Like, no, he's just living his life and he's deciding, well, I'm finally going to go forth with his dream. And he's just working on his boat. He's working. He has a little bit of a moment where he's like, I can't do this. And yes, it's in the rain. So it could seemingly be like that big moment where it's in the rain. It's like, I don't know how to quit you, or, blah, 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 all this other stuff. But it's not. It's just he's like, I can't do this anymore. I have to. He's like, no, I understand. It's not this big over the top moment, which you would kind of expect. But it just feels natural and it just feels normal. And I really, really appreciated that about that
even
moment.
though they do have that bit, which I'm kind of 50-50 on. I think it kind of works because this movie has been doing this kind of stuff throughout the movie where
Mhm.
it'll have, even whenever it gets serious, it'll have some sort of joke or gag going on.
Yeah.
And in this one, it's Doug doing sit-ups hanging from the chandelier, and then he falls down.
Right. But and I'm with you on that, but part of me is like that still seems like something dumb Doug would have done in a very show off manner. Because any other time, like when he's tied up in the truck looking at the paper and everything, he's like, no, it's gonna call the cops, blah, blah, and he looks over and he's like, oh yeah, and he's just like kissing his muscle while looking at him. Like, of course he's gonna
Mm.
do something to I guess prove himself overly. But yeah, that's the one kind of ding on the scene that takes away from it. But overall, it's nice. And then it kind of ends with that harken back to how he first meets her, and that she's kind of twirling the knife, and the reflection on the sun catches his eye. The same thing happens with her clipboard, and I thought that was a really nice touch.
Yeah, and that was something that I've been looking for, it because I was curious if that was something that was like a repeating motif throughout the
Mm-hmm.
movie, but it really is just those two times. It's just like that first moment and then this moment, and it's not something that becomes like a repeating motif throughout the movie.
Right. And an interesting thing too, it's like he's seeing her for the first time again, because when he's at the restaurant, he's seeing her for the first time. And it's
Mhm.
this person who's living this Groundhog Day life that doesn't realize she is, and kind of everyone else that's involved in the setup to kind of keep her sheltered. And then all of a sudden he's meeting this version of Lucy where she knows what's going on, right? Because clearly she has a job, or at least some type of responsibility, or she's teaching an art class within that institute that they're
The
at.
Memory Institute, yeah.
Yes. And she has all of that going on, and she clearly knows what her situation is. She's become a different person. She's grown with that. So in a way, this flashing, he's seeing her for the first time. He's seeing a new version of Lucy that he hasn't seen. Someone that's more in control of her life, or as in control as can be, and is in a way flourishing.
Yeah, she's actually out in public and living her life where
Mm-hmm.
uh, pre-Henry, she was really living a very sheltered life where her day just consisted of going to the Hukilau Cafe, coming home, painting the garage, spending the day with her family, and that was it. And she just did that day after day. Although I do think it's interesting, something that I noticed watching this montage a little bit closely at the very beginning, it looks, we see Lucy painting, and then as the camera spins around, it looks like she's painting the wall of the garage again, which that's something that she was doing when um, Marlon and Doug were like trying to fool her into thinking that it was just the day after her accident. But I don't think that they reverted to that. But it is kind of weird that they're showing her painting the white wall of the garage yet again.
Well, I think it's because it's towards the beginning of the montage that's showing like she's in that place and then has like slowly shifted maybe, or it could even be a thing where she's like visiting for the day, like, hey dad, for old time's sake, let me paint the garage, and then just leaves, because that's kind of been her MO for the longest time, is like you said, getting breakfast, painting a garage, hanging out with family, cooking a
Yeah,
cake.
I think we did the math on an earlier episode on how thick those garage walls would be if
Oh, insane. It's gotta be insane.
I think it was like, and it's the paint would be about 3 inches thick, or 3 to 4 inches
Wow.
thick, or something like that.
That would be nuts. And then of course it's an old shed, so you're just like, oh, this old shed.
Yeah, and then we get just that it's just kind of a typical montage. We get the Henry working at the aquarium with the walruses. We get Lucy driving her Volkswagen thing. Uh, Henry drinking a beer, and then we get this flashback of Lucy and Henry together, like playing out in the field at sunset and holding hands, which I mean, that's kind of nice. Although at the same time, it is kind of weird because we don't. I mean, clearly we can tell just based on context clues that it's a flashback, but it
Mhm.
feels a little weird for them to throw out those like two flashback moments.
It is kind of jarring because the first one makes sense. He's drinking a beer, he's kind of nodding, and then it fades into they're running in a field and having fun and everything. But then it cuts to him moving around a ship wheel, and then her painting, and then it's
Yeah,
to
it's
something
him
else that they're
working.
doing.
Yeah, it's him working on his boat. So because that's like I do like that because that tells the audience that he is actually working towards his dream of going
Hmm.
to Alaska
Yeah.
and getting his boat fixed up so that it can make the voyage.
Yeah, and it's just kind of nice to see that. And even and again, it cuts to him in the rain, going to be like, I can't do this anymore. But it's nice that even though he's finally pursuing that dream and taking those steps, there's still those little moments of doubt where he's like, I can't do this, like I have to, and he's like, no, 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 do your thing, and it goes from there. And then Doug falls from the ceiling.
And like the second part of Lucy's painting, I'm curious if that's supposed to be like the same painting that we see at the beginning because again, it looks like it's harder to tell because we only see like a little bit of a metal shelf, but it kind of feels like the canvas is so big that it almost seems like it's the garage wall yet again. Like
Hmm.
like I still don't fully understand why they decide to keep letting her like keep doing the garage wall whenever it's not that like just give her canvas like buy canvas
Yeah.
isn't that easier to buy a big canvas rather than repainting like taking a picture and or taking a bunch of pictures that I don't know they would have to like stitch together in Photoshop.
Yeah, like one of those big collages or a panoramic, just one long continuous picture. I wonder if originally it was designed to be more like, at least maybe I'm making this up in my head. If he brings her in the garage, he's like, I want you to paint it one last time. And then like she just comes back every so often and like is chipping away at it. I know that's not what it is, but in my
Mhm.
mind, I like to think that that's what it is. And that's why there's like certain sections, and it seems like one overarching piece, because it's not like she's painting one design and then another and then another. Like, no, it's just these lilacs and just, all the colors and everything like that.
You know what? That actually does make sense that the garage would be white because Marlon didn't know about Henry's plan with the videotape whenever he
Hmm.
first showed up. So the previous day he would have painted, taken pictures of Lucy's painting and then painted it over white. And then the next day, Henry comes in with the videotape, and then it's a completely different day. And then after that, they do the videotape every day. So it is possible that through all that time of Lucy and Henry dating, she never did have time to go and paint the garage wall again because she hasn't had time because she's busy dating Henry.
Yeah. And then after that, when she heads to the Institute, she's not painting at the house anymore. She's painting Henry all over her studio.
Yeah. And one other thing that I didn't I'm not sure if I ever caught, but did you realize uh who Lucy is with at the aquarium?
No, I didn't really pay attention to the students or anything.
Yeah, she's with the other Memory Institute guys. Like
Hmm.
she's with the guy in the beanie and 10 Second Tom.
Oh, oh
And
yeah, okay.
yeah, so
Huh.
it's like a Memory Institute field trip to the aquarium, it seems like.
I felt that because when it cuts to her in slow motion and she's pointing, I just saw name tags and I'm like, oh, she's with
Hmm.
that group, but I never looked to their faces to see who from that group she was with. But it's cool to see 10-second Tom in there. I forgot about him. And when
Yeah,
he
I
showed up, I just started giggling again because for the longest time, my father would just be like, hi, he'd walk around the house. Hi, I'm Tom. Hi, I'm Tom. It's like, all right, Dad, we get it.
Yeah, I don't think I've actually pulled that myself until just now, like as as we're talking and I'm kind of flipping back and forth through the clip.
It's still a good look though. Like it's just it's those little details. And I wonder this film has a lot of foreshadowing and a lot of just kind of hiding in plain sightness, if you will. And I really appreciate the reuse and the use of some things and it not necessarily like a pattern, but it's just it all makes sense. All the little pieces, even some of the absurd stuff like, give me some spam and eggs and him calling them peanut butter cups. And then later on he gets some spam and peanut butter cups and it's just like fun little stuff like that. Like it could have been real goofy or really absurd, but everything just kind of works together and stays consistent and it builds to the eventual ending that we get.
Yeah. And then let's see, one thing that I forgot to do was to figure out what song is this playing.
It's
Um,
a reggae take on Drive by the Cars, and I think Ziggy
Drive,
Marley is
okay.
the one that's doing it. And I've been really
Yeah.
into the Cars lately, so when I heard it, I was like, "This is pleasant." I'm like, I like this take on this."
Yeah, it's nice. It's like I know it's I couldn't think of the name, and this album does have a lot of covers in it. It has a lot of like kind of reggae and I
Kind of
think
islandy
the
vibe, kind of.
yeah, one term that I saw when looking up a song for the final clip is Jawaiian, which I'm guessing that's like a mix of Jamaican and Hawaiian.
That makes sense. And I was even wondering that too. I'm like, there's a lot of Jamaican influence here, but it's in Hawaii. It's two very different parts of the ocean, not even in the same ocean.
Yeah, and it was Ziggy Marley, you were right. Then
Nailed it.
and I do like that because like the song is the Who's Gonna Take You Home.
Mm-hmm.
Um and that's I think that that works well in this section because Henry is kind of in the mindset that he has kind of been taking care of Lucy in a
Mm-hmm.
way, and this is the point where Lucy basically cut him off,
Yeah.
and it's her bid to become more independent because she didn't want Henry to be in this position where he's constantly taking care of her and making his own life suffer because of that.
Mm-hmm.
And so
Yeah.
this feels like it's kind of from Henry's point of view. It's almost like a little, you could almost think that there's a little bit of like white knighting in here where Henry's in the mode of, well, who's going to take you home? Like who's going to take care of you because you can't take care of yourself because you have this disability.
Even
But
though
I
she has her dad and Doug and Lucy at the no, excuse me, not Lucy, the woman at the diner and
Mhm.
Nick, like she has people already in place. So yeah, I agree with you on the white knighting thing, where it's like, well, who's going to do this? Everybody that's been doing it, like
But I think it's not I think it's subtle enough that it doesn't really take away. Like I don't feel like it's pushing a negative message because I think and I've talked about it a lot during this entire season that I think that this movie handles the concept of disability very well.
yeah, yeah, I would agree. And because at no point is the joke or the punchline of any joke the disability itself. I mean, I guess 10-second Tom maybe, but it's nothing like in a malicious way. It's just like a hi,
Mhm.
I'm Tom. Go through a circle and we could start throwing some jokes in, but the jokes are aimed at other people, which is nice. Tom himself is not the punchline, which I really
Right.
like. And like you said, everything else is just kind of very delicate to where it's just kind of the dressing on a sandwich, but it's not the sandwich as a whole. Like it's just part of it in order to tell the type of story that we're telling.
Yeah, and I've said it many times throughout this season, but it's really great that at the end of the movie they don't fix her disability. They adjust to her disability.
Yeah, and that's something that I knew was going to be happening in the movie, but there's always still a weird part of me that's like, how does this? Oh, yeah, that's right. Because I often forget, do they or don't they? But I even remember the first time watching him being like, huh, they just kind of rode along with it and didn't do a big fix. It's nice to see because it's different. And it's also that nice, like, kind of overarching message of like acceptance and everything. Not everything needs to be fixed. You can be tweaked and adjusted and moved around it in order to better understand it and then move forward with it. And I think it's a really nice message.
Yeah. And I think that covers this date, this montage. It's fairly short, but there's a lot packed into this single minute, and I think we hit pretty much every major beat. But I'd like to thank you for joining me, and we're gonna have you back here in a couple more weeks to wrap up this movie. And for people that might not know, why don't you take a moment and let everybody know where else you can be found online.
Well, I can also be found with you on rabbitholepodcast.com with Lyrical Innuendo. It's a fantastic show where each episode you and I take a look at a song and we try to determine if it's about sex, drugs, or just good old fashioned rock and roll. Not gonna lie, oftentimes it's sex, but every so often we get curveballs. You know what I mean? We find something that's about rock and roll, or something that's about Star Wars, or something that's about Dune. It's just a lot of fantastic episodes out there, so be sure to check those out. And if you're also on the Rabbit Hole Podcast website, amongst the myriad of other podcasts that are there, there's one called Play MST for Me. Jason Soto has taken me on a adventure into the not too distant future, and we're watching every single episode of Mystery Science Theater 3000 from the beginning, because that's what a super fan does. He doesn't say, hey, I like this, here's 1 or 2 episodes. He says, hey, let's start at the beginning and watch all of it. So I'm locked in, ready to go, and I'm having a ball.
Nice. And of course, you can find me. I am on social media everywhere where I am Bubbawheat, currently most active on Instagram and slightly less, but still somewhat active on Threads. You can also find this show, It's Time to Rewind, on all the available podcatchers, where we also have a Facebook group. It's Time to Rewind, a time loop group, and you can join that and stay up to date about what we are covering in the future, get notified about any potential hiatuses, and all sorts of stuff. You can have discussions about episodes as they come out, and you can also have discussions about other time loop movies, TV shows. That's welcome there as well. And until next time, I will see you again for breakfast next week.
I said